People who have hooked up with others with a massive age gap between you. How did it happen? Story 1. I sort of fooled around with a professor once. I'm a male, she's female. It was a practical class that she taught, and we had a lot of one-on-one time with her. I was having a lot of problems with a single aspect of my work, but she said it was otherwise some of the top stuff in her class. We got along really well, joking and playful teasing. She was 36, and I was 20 years old. She kept office hours on Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. I had to talk to her about an assignment that I did really poorly on. I went to see her to discuss about it, and she said, "Okay, let's sit down and rework some parts here." So, sitting side by side, we worked on it, each doing a piece and leaning over each other. There was a strange moment where we made eye contact, and she leaned in. We kissed and started making out pretty passionately. She started feeling me up, and I did the same. She put her hand on my junk, through my jeans, and pulled back. She said something like, "Oh no, we can't do this. Oh God, I'm sorry." I said sorry. She said, No, it's my fault." We just kind of sat there for a while in awkward silence. I broke the silence and said, "Look, I can see how this might be a bad situation for you. I just want you to know I won't tell anyone, okay? We'll just pretend this didn't happen. I don't want to frick over your career," which I didn't. She was a great professor. She said thanks. I left. We didn't work as closely anymore, but she still marked me fairly. We didn't talk about it again. Story 2. She had a crush on me. I thought she was very hot, but holy crap, she was at least a decade older than me. How intimidating. I asked her to join me at a bar for karaoke night. We just talked that night. The next week, she invited me over to her place to watch the first GOP nomination debate for the then upcoming 2016 election. Somehow, romance still bloomed. She hit on me some more, but holy crap, she's at least a decade older than me. Eventually, we wept, glancing at each other until she leaned over and kissed me. I kissed back, and she crawled on my lap and took her shirt off, and it went from there. Almost 3 years later, we're getting married this April. Wow, you managed to fall in love and find your future wife while watching a GOP nomination debate. That's pretty impressive. Who knew politics could be something so romantic? Story 3. In college, I went to a bar that attracted an older crowd to watch a friend's band play there. Most people there were late 30s, early 40s. I was wandering around casually talking to people. Talked to a 40-something for a while. To my surprise, she invited me back to her place. Drunk me said yes. She still had it for 40 plus. I stayed over that night. The next morning, as I was leaving, I crossed paths with her son in the kitchen as I was walking out. He was about my age. He stood there confused for a second, and I saw it in his face the moment he realized what happened. I turned and walked to the front door, and he yelled, "Really, bro?" I smirked, shrugged, then opened the door and left. Damn, that guy will go through life knowing that there's a non-zero chance of anyone online telling him that they fricked his mom, and they might not actually be lying. Story 4. Hooked up with a guy who was 24 years older than me. I was in my 20s. We worked together and got on together well. It started with friendly lunches, turned into attraction. I didn't find him physically attractive at first. He was 6 inches shorter than me and kind of pudgy. His personality more than made up for it, and over time, it changed his looks in my eyes, and I became physically attracted to him. He appreciated me. He genuinely listened to me, made me feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. He was fun to talk to, always had funny stories. The age difference never bothered me. I could always feel eyes on us when we went out and showed any PDA. Funny how the men would always be the ones to stare, and women just looked at me like a gold digger. In the bedroom, he had a small D, but always made sure I was taken care of with oral and his hands. When you've only had young guys pound on you like a jackrabbit, having someone slow down was a fantastic change. He spoiled me from beginning to end. We eventually stopped seeing each other because we wanted different things in life. He had never been married or had kids, and that's something that I wanted in my life. The split was harder on me, I think, but I moved on and have the life I had always wanted. I hope for him it's the same. Story 5. Best friend's mom back in high school was going through a divorce. Known her since I was in 3rd grade. One night I go over there to hang with a friend, and she answers the door all disheveled looking. Seems like she'd been crying. She says, "Andy isn't home." I said, "Are you okay, Miss Johnson?" She then began crying again, and I let myself in to comfort her. We talked and drank some wine. She was really sad with no self-confidence. She then said, I am never going to find another man like the name of her now ex-husband. I then told her, you're beautiful, a hard-working, loving, amazing mom. You'll get scooped up real quick. And she laughed. I then said, I'm serious. He's just a jerk, and he'll never be happy with anyone if he couldn't see what he had before. We were both then silent for a while and exchanged flirty looks for a couple of minutes, and then we hooked up. Next morning, she thanked me for everything, and I left. She got married like 3 years later and has seemed super happy ever since. Jesus, what a story. Not gonna lie, the plot of this story doesn't really sound that real to me. Sounds really similar to those videos from naughty sites on the internet, if you know what I mean. Story 6. Just got laid off from my job, freshly split with my wife, super heartbroken, and unsure about my future in my life. Went to the hockey rink to watch some playoff hockey with my dad and brother. There was this gorgeous, sexy MILF that served there, and since basically everyone in my town was out of work, the place was packed. I was super attracted to her, but because she was being hit on by nearly 50 other men, I didn't even bother to, because I could tell she was done with being hit on at that point. I had talked to her before, and we got along quite well, so we did kind of know each other. Anyways, turned out to be a great night. Had fun with my family and some friends. The hockey team we were cheering for won their playoff game, and we ended up staying until closing. Almost everyone left, including my dad and brother. I hadn't drank that much, so I was still sober, but there were about 6 people lingering around with obvious intentions to try to go home with her. I paid my bill and said goodbye, but when she asked me if I'd stay until she closed up to walk her to her car, I told her I'd be happy to. So I helped her clean a few tables while she was cashing out and kicking out the last 6 or so patrons who were laying it on thick, trying to convince her to come home with them. They all eventually left. She asked for a ride home. We got in my truck. She asked if I wanted to hang out for a bit. We went back to my house, and for the next couple of months, we hooked up as much as physically possible. It was the best couple of months I had had in a few years. We got along, laughed, cuddled, and just enjoyed each other for a few months before we both moved away from there. And today, we are happily married, living our best lives. Story 7. I delivered her newspaper and went to collect for the money, and she apparently didn't have any. Instead, she invited me in and gave 22-year-old me the hour of a lifetime. She was 58. Story 8. Immigrant from Japan with an international age gap story. I was 23, she was 48. We met casually online and decided to hang out. I asked to go to lunch. She skipped the games and came straight to my place. 2 years later, we're still together, and I cannot fathom dating someone under 40. Here's a fun anecdote. At first, she sidestepped conversations about age until I busted her thanks to being a huge nerd. Mentioning the 1977 cult horror film Hazu elicited a knee-jerk response of, "Oh my god, I saw it in the theaters," and I will forever be jealous that she got to see Hazu on the big screen. Story 9. I'm only interested in men much older than me. My ex was 37 years older than me, and we were together for 4 years. We met at work. I was a saleswoman, and he was a security guard. The man I'm with now is turning 60 this year. I'm turning 31. We met at a party. Story 10. My wife of 8 years is 16 years younger than I am. And honestly, it just happened. I have friends who are about 10 years younger than I am, and she was dating the brother of one of them. He dumped her, and 8 months later, we started dating. I was kind of hesitant to ask her out, but when we spent time together, we were able to hold intelligent conversations that were mutually interesting. She was cute and liked my looks. Still does, thankfully. It just kind of developed into a loving relationship. She was 22 when we started dating and is 32 now and is pregnant with our first child. She constantly tells me that she pisses off her coworkers by bragging about how good I am to her. She has coworkers that are older than I am, all the way down to some who are younger than she is. So it's not an age thing. We're just as much in love today as we were 8 years ago and are content to spend the rest of our lives together. Well, you know, some people do say age is just a number, and seems like in this story, it's true. Story 11. I was an 18-year-old college freshman virgin. She was a 26-year-old super senior. Met her through mutual friends, and she was on me like white on rice from the start. Ended up in a toxic, manipulative relationship for about 5 months before I realized I was being toyed with. By that time, I was out a fair bit of money, a few friends, and my grades were in the gutter from stress. Later, found out that she had a thing for virgin guys and had done the same kind of stuff to several other guys. But she was the first woman to show any physical interest in me at all, so it fricked me up pretty good for a while. 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. Still regret losing my V card to her. Wish I would have saved it for the wonderful woman I've spent the last 5 years with. Story 12. She was in her mid-50s. I was in my late 20s. We met through a couple who we were both, separately, very close to. So we were continually running into each other socially, and every time we did, we had a blast. Then I was badly injured in a construction accident at the same time that she lost an eye due to a detached retina that went very wrong. Neither one of us was in a condition where we could recuperate safely alone, but in a sort of the lame leading the blind manner way, we could get by. So we spent a lot of time healing together and really coming to understand each other. She was a great cook, and I lived on 7-Eleven burritos and salad bars, so one day I asked her to show me some basic kitchen moves. We had some wine, cooked, had some more wine, and then we spent 25 years together. And I suppose there was always a little of the thought, what the hell are we doing? And we did try to separate several times. I've never wanted children or cared about a typical family, so I don't feel like I gave up on anything. I suppose there was some kind of dependence issues on both our parts, but I wonder if dependence or mutual support might be part of what makes great relationships. I can't emphasize this too strongly. We had a wonderful time. Perhaps by some measures we weren't very responsible, but I have no regrets. She was ill the last few years with Alzheimer's, and I did my best to care for her. That was hard, but it made me a better person, and dementia took her away more gently than it does most people, so even that had its good aspects. We all have to age physically, but a few of us get to stay youthful in our outlook and attitudes, and in our ability to love. I believe there's a degree of choice in this. She never really let age diminish her. I was a lucky guy. Story 13. I was 16 with daddy issues, and he just got out of a bad marriage. He was sweet. He took me on my first date. We went on a Ferris wheel, and I used to bring him home-cooked meals. I just wanted an older man's approval, and he was in a bad place and needed that attention. He was about 30 years my senior. He kept me out of trouble for a while, so I'm not complaining. Story 14. I had a roommate whose girlfriend moved in with him. He wound up not being able to pay his rent, so I evicted him, and she dumped him. But I let her stay until she got back on her feet. She's 13 years younger than me. Once he left, she started feeling her oats. Married for 16 years now. I'm not sure how I feel about this story. Seems like you just backstabbed your friend. You could have kept him instead of his now ex-girlfriend. Story 15. We worked together at a cinema. He was a technical guy, and I sold popcorn. I was invited to help him with this, and one thing led to another. We managed to keep that going for about 3 years. He turned 43, and I turned 20. And then I left the job, and I have no regrets. Story 16. Looking back, this was probably abuse of some form, but it never felt that way. I was 17, and she was exactly 3 times my age, 52 years old. She was an aerobics instructor at a senior assisted living facility and very attractive because of her job. I was working in the kitchen, washing dishes, because it was my final year of high school, and my dad thought I needed to hold down a job and learn some responsibility. I learned a lot more than that. Story 17. Hooked up with a single mom at a small-town music festival when I was 17. I think she thought that I was older than I really was. Please leave your story down below in the comments. I would absolutely love to make a video about them in the future. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, Brainy fam, peace.